This episode is supported by Little Saints. More than a non-alcoholic beverage, it's a mushroom-infused cocktail that elevates the soul. Use code TheMothers20 for 20% off at littlesaints.com. That's TheMothers20 for 20% off at littlesaints.com. Now, enjoy the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Mothers. I'm Sarah Brown, here helping us get to know the inner worlds of industry leaders and changemakers who are also somehow raising kids. How are they doing it? How are they feeling about it? What can we learn from them? Quick reminder to subscribe and follow and give us a 5-star review, assuming we've earned it, wherever you listen, and follow us on Instagram at The Mothers Pod for some easy clips and behind-the-scenes content. Today, we have a conversation I've been dying to share with everyone. Quick context, we launched as The Mothers, seeing it as a powerful reclaiming of a term that many people decide to define on behalf of mothers, intended to say essentially, we're mothers. We're the fucking mothers. We run companies, we run households, we run the world. See us, deal with us. But I will say for sure, I've been thinking about a gendered assumption within mother. And what defines a mother? Is it a cis female with kids? Is it a female identifying person with kids? Is it a human with kids that takes on a disposition or behaviors or tasks that society has decided to associate with mother? Do kids make a mother? What about people that take on a maternal mothering role toward things other than kids? Businesses, pets, students. I also think about how there are challenges and specific dynamics to mothers in the most classical, even if problematic and outdated definition of mothers as, quote, women with kids. And I don't want those to get lost. And then my marketing background kicks in. And if you try to be everything to everyone, you're nothing. So then I sit in the swirl and the tension and say, well, fuck it. Let's let our guests tell their stories. Let's find people we admire, are curious about, who challenge us and make us think, who have big visions and big hearts and big wisdom, and let's give them a platform to share their experience. And that's largely what brought us to today's guest, Jarret Zafran, a Harvard graduate who found his way into politics and then law school and, quote, big law at WilmerHale. He's also a father of 2 through surrogacy and egg donation. He and his husband worked with a large agency to have their daughter and found the experience fine, but lacking in personal care for all parties involved. Like so many of our guests, he decided to build what he wished he had. Taken a leap, leaving WilmerHale, and he became the founder and executive director of Brownstone Surrogacy, a full-service surrogacy agency based in New York City that marries professionalism and competence with compassion and personalized support. The other more personal part of what brought us to Jarret is that he and Brownstone Surrogacy and a loving surrogate are wonderfully helping my own amazing brothers-in-law have their first child, due later this fall. In this conversation, we talk about career pivots, the impossibility of keeping work and kids separate in the pandemic, what it's like to have your identity as a parent merge so closely with your profession, and, most moving to me, what it's like to parent when there is no default or, quote, she-fault parent. So much of what Jarret said about his own parenting journey made me think differently about the roles mothers traditionally take on and why, and what a blessing and a burden it might be to approach it all with a blank piece of paper that says, you get to decide. So I invite you to enjoy our conversation with Jarret Zafran. Jarret, thank you for being here. Welcome to all of us. You get to see me now.
Hi.
Hello,
Our
V.
secret sauce.
So nice to meet you.
The secret sauce of the mothers. Yeah. I gave you a little bit of the spiel when we talked earlier, Jarret, but premise of this whole thing was like I had left my job, figuring out what I wanted to do next, was in more of the mother caregiver world than I really ever had been before, and saw in a way that I knew of but didn't realize in the same way just how no one really gave enough respect towards these people that are carrying society and the future of society. And then also realizing that I just didn't see a lot of stories about parents from a place of kind of strength. And a lot of the stories, parents, not to say this about you, but like hypothetically, Jarret, you no longer exist. You only exist as a father or you exist as a working professional. There's no story about like the fullness of Jarret. And I was like, there's so many incredible, badass people, even people like us who have a lot more to say if we can live in a less segmented way and kind of integrate these sides of ourselves. And then I am saddled with 3 kids. V had not yet been saddled with a child, but I was thinking desperately about who would possibly do this with me. And I was like, if I can convince V to do this with me, I feel like it might work.
And then I came into the picture.
Yes.
So I don't know if you know this, but I was Sarah and Jason's first nanny for their first son. And I was with them until they had their second daughter. And then I decided to venture out into California and work in corporate America fun. So I was a nanny for a while and then ventured into executive assistant work where I worked alongside many working parents who are juggling like crazy businesses and also their families. And then I kind of fell into motherhood in that I had broken up with my long-term girlfriend, realized I was in love with my best friend, and then we had a kid. And so now I'm like unexpectedly, he's almost 11 months now. He's also currently breastfeeding and usually falls asleep while we chat. But now I get to soak up all these like beautiful, amazing conversations while I wasn't like planned parenthood. So now I get to like learn all these cool, fun things from people. So it's been a real pleasure and honor to like get to do this and share this with Sarah.
That's awesome. You're like, oh, that's where they get their name from.
Exactly. I know. I said that and then I was like,
People.
But it's true. Not me, but here we are.
No,
Yeah.
More planful than how I had my kids.
Yes.
I know. I was just going to say surrogacy is ultimate uber planned.
Yes.
There's no oopsie surrogacy babies.
Oh, and I want to hear all about
left and right. Yeah. And I really, I'm very excited for this conversation for many reasons. But one being that we are, exploring like what does it mean to be a mother, and how does gender play a role in that or not, and how does gender play a role in parenting or not, and the things. I think we'll get into this, but one of our latest slants is invisible labor and how there is. I am curious how much gendered norms in a heterosexual couple play into a way that invisible labor shows up. So anyways, there's lots for us to talk about, and including also the role that you play helping others become parents and how you're guiding them on how to, in some ways, not just create a child, but also like kind of how to manage in those, at least the early days. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We are very honored.
I'll say that when we're like into the meat of it again.
Okay.
Also, thank you in a way that you can use on your recording.
You've done this before. I appreciate it. Okay, so the way we like to start is getting our guests to share their version of their story and how they arrive at the Jarret of today. We see bios, and I will give you a glowing intro about all that your resume has to offer. But I love hearing about how our guests describe their own story, and then also if there are any through lines that sort of help you understand why you are where you are today. Those are always very interesting to hear about. So if you wouldn't mind kicking it off, that would be lovely.
Sure. Do I start at the beginning?
Yes.
I was born on.
Yes.
I was born in the 80s. I'm an elder millennial.
Yes.
I was born in New Jersey and grew up in New Jersey in the suburbs of New York City. My parents had 3 kids, and I am the youngest of the 3. And like classic small town, like less than 5,000 people in my town, 80 kids until high school that all, went to school together. And then went off to college and, found an interest in politics. So that was actually my first sort of professional path. After a weird year teaching at a British boarding school, I worked as a political pollster. And then the sort of natural next step for a lot of people is to law school. And I did not buck that trend and went to law school, became an attorney, and thought that my professional path would be involving some sort of politics, legal role. After clerking for a couple of federal judges and finding myself at a big law firm in litigation, that's where sort of we come into the modern era. And I became both a parent and made a radical left turn in my professional life. But along the way, I did meet my husband. I guess he's a critical piece of this puzzle.
Yeah.
So we've been together for 12 years and married almost for 8 now. and I live in New York City.
And you have 2 kids.
Yes.
Now, is that right?
I have 2 girls. Naomi is 5, and Annie will be 3 in September.
Oh, beautiful names.
Yeah, those are.
Yeah. So when, how did having kids, you talked about you came into the modern era, and it seems implied that having kids made you maybe not know if Big Law was where it was at for you, but I'm curious, tell me more about that and how you came to that realization and why.
Yeah. So 2020 was a crazy year for all of us, obviously. Really like feels like a long time ago. And also yesterday. So my older daughter was born in March of 2020.
Wow.
And we get back to New York City. And obviously we'll talk a little bit more about surrogacy, but she was born in Cincinnati. We get back to New York City on March 12th. Everything is sort of in that like space where things are starting to shut down, and every day brings new guidance, and we're told not to wear masks, then we're told to wear masks,
Right.
schools are shutting, everything's shutting down. We have this newborn. We promptly both get COVID. The Upper West Side where we live is nothing but sirens. Just the streets are dead. I've never seen New York City like that. You know, the true like peak of the just awfulness that was the early days of COVID, especially in a city like New York. And then 3 weeks after my daughter was born, New York State finally legalized gestational surrogacy. And we were, you know, a holdout state. We were the 47th state to do so. And so that the experience of having my daughter, of having a sort of mediocre experience along the way to having her, of this changing in New York, and sort of this light bulb went off in my head to try to do this better, to be the person that we would have wanted guiding us, you know, in retrospect. But I was still working at a law firm.
Yeah.
I had a good chunk of parental leave, thankfully, returned to the firm in that summer, and working remotely and having to bill your time in 6-minute increments and respond to partners on Friday nights when you have like a little kid crawling around your tiny apartment. Just that multitasking of having to, you know, I think you speak pretty eloquently on this podcast about how there's sort of 2 sides of us as parents, especially as working parents. There's the professional side and the personal side. But when you are locked in an apartment and the professional doesn't have boundaries because you're sort of expected to be working essentially all the time, and the personal side also has no boundaries because you have a newborn and there's no support, especially during a global pandemic. There can be no support helping you. There was no way for me to separate them, and having to do both simultaneously for me is one of the most stressful things about being a parent.
Yes.
Not being fully present in one way or another, not being able to segment whatsoever, but having to parent and like out of the corner of your eye, watch your toddler pull books off of the bookshelf over and over again, while you know that you're under time pressure to return some sort of thing to one of your many bosses. I hated it. And so there was this sort of push of wanting to do this, start a surrogacy agency and do this professionally in a way that I would have wanted. Also, the pull out of the law firm because it just wasn't sustainable.
Yeah. And so brave. People use different words. Whenever we talked, a lot of people on this podcast are founders in their own way. And I'll always say, we're so brave for leaving something established and building something new. But where did you get the courage or whatever, or the stupidity to do it? Like, I feel like there's some
the energy,
the energy to take that leap into an area. I mean, you were a highly trained, exceptional lawyer. Building a business is also a different skill set too. So I'm just curious how you got yourself ready to do that.
Naivete, I think.
Love it.
The answer.
Yeah.
My dad actually ran his own business in a totally different field. He had a small little pharmaceutical company in New Jersey, but you know, I did have that model growing up of somebody who was their own boss and employed people and had that flexibility and got to sort of chart their own course. And and, grew up with stories of the ups and downs that he went through. I mean, there was a time right around the time that I was born, actually, where a large client of his defaulted on a massive payment, and he was near bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
So, I knew it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, but I also felt like we were in a place, because my husband had a seemingly stable job at the time, where, and I just waited for my bonus from the law firm to clear.
Of course.
Giving notice.
Yes.
As one does. So I felt like, okay, we have a cushion. I have this degree I can fall back on if this really doesn't pan out, if I don't have the passion for it that I hope I do when I sort of devote myself full time to starting this business.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel kind of lucky. I don't feel like it was particularly brave. I know there's a lot of people that have ideas and don't pursue them, but I also felt like I had a safety net.
Yeah.
And that's a massive privilege, right? There's a lot of people that risk a lot more than I did to start their businesses. And for me, at the end of the day, I knew if this doesn't work out, if I don't want to pursue it, I can go back to some sort of law job, and I will be not as happy doing it probably, but it will pay the bills, and it's fine.
Yeah.
So having that as a sort of contingency plan was massive in giving me sort of the freedom to just quit my job, lose the income entirely, and devote myself to figuring out what does it look like to start a business in this field I've never, other than my personal experience, have no professional connection to.
Yeah. And how has it played out in terms of juggling kids? If in a different way, in big law, work was all the time, kids were also all the time, this lack of boundaries. I'm curious, I'm speaking for myself too. I now feel like I also have a lack of boundaries, but in a different way, where it's all happening at once. But I'm curious how
separation.
It's played.
So I started my own business.
Right.
Yeah.
So how has that played out for you since?
Yeah, it's I feel like it's classic where I have complete control over my time, but it also never ends.
Yeah.
It's a 24/7 business. I mean, not just because there's like pregnancies involved, but also because, initially I was the single point of contact for literally everybody, every surrogate, every intended parent. And even now, with a small team, I'm constantly on. There's always something on social media, on Slack, on email. There's always, some conversation to have with a client. And that's the whole point, is to make this personal, to be accessible and responsive to them. Like that's infused into like the ethos of the agency. So I work a lot of nights, but the difference is that between 5 or 5:30, when I sort of log off and start cooking dinner while my husband picks up the girls from their respective schools or daycares, until about 8:30, when they're consistently asleep, which is its own blessing, that I actually do sleep pretty well. That probably saves me a lot. In those hours, I really don't work. So I am not multitasking. I'm not pulled away unless there's a true crisis. There's nobody that is expecting me to push aside my family to do this, because I'm my own boss. And that is huge. And so even if I'm working then from 8:30 until 11, which at different points was sort of, night in and night out, the state of affairs, it's for a reason. It's for a self-imposed reason. It's within my control. And it makes such a world of difference.
Yeah. Do you think it's something that a leap that you would have taken, maybe not this business, but without having had kids, would you have arrived in a similar place of wanting essentially more control or a smaller environment?
It's a great question. I don't know. I mean, certainly, obviously not this business, because it was like how I had my kids turned into my career. I would have eventually left the law firm, but would it have been for something that was entrepreneurial? I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
I certainly have that spirit, right? Like, I have that. My dad has it. My sister has it. My mom. So like, there's just sort of like I think of an attitude of like, I can figure this out, that some people have. And again, that's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It just like is for some people, sort of how they're wired. to just sort of assume that they can tackle problems and that it'll work out. So it's possible that I could have done some sort of entrepreneurial thing, but I think the more likely path is that I would have parlayed my legal degree into some sort of legal adjacent job, working for like the city government or something. I would have always had a boss. I would have had a principal that was very demanding. I would have had like the same patterns of, not working a 9 to 5 in any respect.
Yeah.
So no, I think 2020 like was so disruptive for so many people for so many different reasons. And I think for me it was like kids, the world seems to be falling apart, and also I should listen to my gut because I have this passion for something that growing up never would have thought in a million years I'd be doing. So like let me just run with it and see.
Yeah. Does it surprise you how much being a parent like sort of matters to you? This is a podcast called The Mothers. I find it amazing and hilarious that like in some ways it's the thing I least identify as, but the thing is most important to be doing. Just curious if for you, is it surprising that this has like become such a love for you?
Yeah, I think it is surprising. It is impossible to piece apart my identity in this business because again, the whole thing is like I'm running an agency as somebody who has done this personally. Like, I've been in your shoes, right? So, and my identity as a parent to littles, as a parent in a same-sex marriage, like all of those things are front and center. So I think a lot of people have the luxury of deciding sort of how their personal identities show up in professional life and deciding to collapse the two or not. It was just never going to be the case that my personal life could be kept separate from my professional life when I chose to do this. So it makes my identity as a parent more front and center for everybody. But yeah, it definitely changed sort of how I think of myself. I think I probably would have sort of seen myself first and foremost as an attorney or as like a gay attorney. And now like having kids and doing what I do, it is like parent first. And then probably gay parent, and then small business owner, and then attorney. Like all of the sort of other things have been knocked out of the top ranking. And also parenting is just like a ton of my time, right? I'm in the thank God it's Monday phase where the weekends feel very long. What do I do with these children?
So tell me about that. Like how I want to get into a little bit of how you and your husband make all of this work and the divvying up of the logistics and also maintaining time, hopefully, to be yourselves separately and also run your business and all these things. You, for our audience, when you and I first chatted, you started articulating what otherwise I think of sort of as like minute details around the birth of a child and the responsibilities between parents in a way that actually made me cry, because as you're educating your clients, same-sex couples, where you actually have to talk about things like who's going to cut the umbilical cord and who's going to do chest to chest first. And there was something that, even as I'm saying it, it's making me emotional, but there was something about hearing that spelled out. Whereas I, sitting in a sort of classically heterosexual marriage, I deliver the baby, and of course they like plop the child on my chest after I'm in pain and exhausted. And they're like, here you go. And they give dad the scissors and like all the things. So it was just, there's something I thought incredibly powerful. I just, the idea, which I'm sure is not, everything has blessings and curses, but you and your husband get to kind of you get to decide to a degree in a way that maybe I, as a straight woman, didn't feel like I didn't even know the things that I wasn't deciding. So I'm just curious how you approach, dividing up the joys of raising children in the context of a complicated world.
It's something I think about all the time, because there's no default, right? There's just no default. There's no default within our relationship. There's no default that's imposed societally, and it comes up all the time. Like I think it's not until you sort of learn to see the patterns do you realize like how endemic this is in everything, right? So like it could have been that like, you know, the husband is outside smoking the cigar and celebrating and you're like, I really hope I don't get mastitis. Like,
Yes.
right? It's just like it's the bar is set so low, unfortunately. It's set so low for most men in heterosexual couples, and obviously there's been a lot of ink spilled, and people are buying the fair play cards when you know what from like Eve Rodsky or whatnot, and trying to figure out like what does work for them in a more intentional way. But I think for a lot of same-sex couples, not all, but for a lot, because there's no default assumption that the mother is going to be the primary parent when it comes to the massive list of tasks, laundry, buying clothes, buying shoes, keeping track of things, putting labels in, like lunches and snacks for school, and you know every single meal, and you know the sheets on their bed, and when do we transition from a crib to a toddler bed to you know twin size mattress, like I mean parenting is really tough, and there are just endless lists about everything, about like how do we train this kid to sleep, how do we feed this kid, how do we clothe this kid, what are the camp and school decisions, and that cognitive load, you know, research bears this out, usually falls on the mother. And we don't have that, and so I am food daddy and he is laundry daddy. And I did research around the schools, but he does a lot of the day-to-day, and he's responsible for keeping things clean and orderly, and I'm responsible for like household projects or vacations. Like we just and we didn't like sit down and use cards or anything, and obviously there's friction and this isn't perfect, but I think there's a sort of natural questioning of, well, is this going to be a thing that you do, or is this something that I'm going to do? And there are clear lines of division. And I think for us, that works. I think other people, you know, there might be a little bit of more of a give and take depending on like who is particularly busy at a given moment or whatever. But we know what each of us is responsible for. That works for us. And there's certain things that we switch off, like, you know, we have dentist appointments on Friday and I'm taking them this time and he took them last time and whatever. But, you know, I think the default, from what I observe at least, and I don't mean to speak with the broadest of brushes, but I guess I'm speaking with a broad brush, in most heterosexual couples, it seems to be that like the dentist appointment was inevitably booked by the wife or mother, and she was the one that knew that starting at age 2 or 3, the kids should probably start to go to the dentist. And she had purchased the toothbrush and the toothpaste and the floss and everything around dental care. And maybe the husband is brushing their teeth and bringing them to the dentist, but all of it was plotted out by his wife. And we are certainly not perfect, but I think there's like almost a freedom in being just set apart from those expectations. And it starts, I mean, Sarah, to what you were saying about our last conversation, it starts because there's a million and one decisions that somebody has to make when they're bringing their kid into the world through surrogacy. And our role is not to make any of these decisions for them, but to just prod them to thinking about it, right? Like, hey, you know, you're not carrying this pregnancy, but you need to know that you're going to need a pediatrician lined up. Sometimes pediatricians aren't accepting new patients, and you should call them in advance and make sure they accept your insurance. And, you know, are you going to camp out near your surrogate's hospital in advance, or are you going to wait for the frantic phone call? And do you have your to-go bag packed? And who is standing where in the room? And if there's only 2 people allowed in the room, who's it going to be? And who's doing skin to skin first? And are you okay with vitamin K and erythromycin eye ointment? And it's just a ton of planning. Because, you know, I think for men, even when the pregnancy is like living with them and they're there, they're not sort of forced to think through a lot of these things. And it's even more sort of surreal and abstract when she may be halfway across the country from you. And you're like, intellectually, I know I'm about to have a kid, but I am not reminded by that every day in a way that makes me actually plan for this. So I have to step in and make sure that people are planning, and hopefully that sets them off on a course of like planning how we feed this kid and how we diaper this kid and what gear we need. And everybody knows to get like a stroller and a bassinet, but like go deeper.
Totally. It does make me think, where this all begins. And like, I think there is, in my experience, much as to what you were describing, of there are things that because you are there, because you're at the OB appointments and you're seeing these doctors on a recurring basis, and because it's your medical experience, and then because you've delivered and because you are showing up, and me as a woman in this scenario had more of a maternity leave than my husband, like you're just kind of like in the system more. It wasn't a proactive effort, to be honest. It was more I have to do this, and I'm the only one. And even things, I had a great colleague at work who would always talk about how it signs up like the power that maybe everyone should think 5 times before you put your own email address down on anything when you sign up for when you sign up for the dentist appointments or the pediatric appointments or the summer camps, like that, whoever's email is on that sign up form is basically fucked for the rest
forever.
of their life. And I don't know.
You're getting the reminders right now. I'm signing the waivers,
Exactly.
forms for the swim lessons and the camp. And, So both of our email inboxes are clogged. And
and I've seen some people try like they have a sort of family email address that everyone has access to, but it also seems to fall into the same camp. So within all of that though, and I know we were sort of joking about the fair play cards, but how do you think, I mean, within your own relationship, if you want, but also even as you see among your clients, like how some of this, the cognitive load, the mental load, the invisible labor is all something that needs to be seen and known, and ideally not for one person to suffer underneath the weight of all of that themselves. And outgrowth of that is the inevitable sort of resentment and frustration that like builds over time, fundamentally around the idea like this isn't fair. And I'm annoyed by that. And then I've personally gone through waves of being like, well, actually I think it's actually never gonna really be fair, because maybe sure within the context of strictly parenting, there's the role that we play, but then there's also the role that we play beyond that in our marriage of, I don't know, who's paying attention to our investments and who's scheduling some other appointment that I can't think about or who's setting up their own haircut. Like, there are a lot of the lists, if we really wanted to, there are a lot of places to like keep track of points. But I'm curious like how the idea of fairness when it comes to parenting shows up and how that relates even to happiness. I'd rather be happy than it be fair, I think. But I'm curious about that.
Right. And fairness doesn't mean equality. It means like what works for that, particular set of parents. And I think for us, we both work and we both have similarly demanding jobs and we both have similar flexibility. I guess I have a little bit more flexibility. So, and that has all changed too. We've had different jobs. We've been in offices. We've been at home. We've had 1 kid. Now we have 2 kids. I think you're right that ultimately it's about what works, and what works is hopefully what leads to happiness. And it's not always a breeze having little kids just generally. And like these, I'm told it gets a little bit better over time as the kids get a little older.
Yeah.
And maybe not when they're in middle school, but
harder in a different way.
Right.
So, I think, I don't know that it's always the happiest time, but at least the sort of division of labor and feelings of resentment are not added on to the difficulty of raising little kids.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have great answers here other than like...
You're not the expert. I keep looking for an expert. There are a lot of people that say they are, but I think they just say catchy things on the internet.
Yeah, fair enough. I wish I had marketing sense for like I think it's whatever works for that couple. I just think the problem is that a lot of couples are not even having the conversation.
Yeah.
Right? And hopefully society is changing in that way, but the resentment breeds when it's not something that was mutually decided. It's something that was sort of defaulted to.
Right.
That, so one day you wake up and like, why am I responsible for all of these things? And like, even if I have quote unquote the good partner that like actually steps up and is really active and involved with our children and is like present as a father, like, why am I still like creating the environment where that is possible for him?
Yeah.
Basically telling him what to do.
Yeah.
So, I think we don't have that. We have other sort of issues, but we don't have that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like as your kids have gotten older that the process of shining light or putting a visibility to these responsibilities has gotten easier? Because I think something along the lines of what Sarah was saying before, like so much of this stuff in many relationships is not spoken about. And so it's not even obvious that all of this stuff is happening in the background. But I think from the beginning, having these conversations about the smallest things, as far as like even cutting the cord, like if you are speaking about that from like the beginning, week one of having a kid, like, do you feel like that's gotten easier and more natural for you? And like, do you see with your clients that it has gotten like, I don't know, they seem more confident and successful in that? Or what is that like?
I mean, I definitely think it's something that you get better at over time. Like just like anything, you're sort of forced to practice it. I think for, gay men in particular, and it actually, the slight majority of my clients are heterosexual couples that are turning to surrogacy for, other reasons, medical and psychological indications. But for the gay male couples, I think initially you're sort of put at a disadvantage in that society is sort of built again on this assumption that it is the moms that are doing the work. And so like when there are communities of new moms or mommy and me, or you go to a class, like it's moms, or if somebody's looking for like parent friends, it's really mom friends, and they're the ones doing the stroller meetups in the park. And part of this is also that women are better at social connection typically. Right. So if you among your couple have divided things in a way that feels equitable, initially, you're not even attuned to sort of what the things are that you need to be dividing. And I think there's an additional there's just an extra step of knowing like what is out there, what should I be thinking of, what gear do I need, whereas usually, especially if you've been the one carrying the child and you have like friends that are at a similar stage or who have also been pregnant, like you already start during pregnancy swapping notes, sharing resources, and like forwarding the Google Sheet and all of the things that you've developed. And that continues into nannies and daycare and pediatricians and decisions on, clothing and where to buy onesies and whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that naturally follows, and part of it is a burden that these resources are going to the women, and then they're expected to sort of be the ones that know the things and make the decisions, and that's not happening for usually same-sex male couples. And then I think you find a way to overcome that disadvantage, and maybe in some ways it's better that you're not burdened by all of this information all at once as a new parent. And then it gets a little bit easier to answer your question more directly, V, because your kids end up being preschoolers and school-age children. And even if, again, it's not the same, you are automatically meeting other parents of kids that age through childcare and school. And so then it starts to equalize a little bit because we are on the text threads and in the WhatsApp groups when people are reminding each other about summer camp deadlines or what have you. So I think there's like ups and downs to it all, and it's different. I don't know if it's easier or harder overall because I don't know the comparison personally. And for my clients, I think, similarly, each one has a very different orientation towards this and village to start out with. Sometimes there's a single mother by choice that knows that I'm going to need to move near my family, and I've already had conversations with my family about how they're going to help me, or a single father by choice, with the same sort of thing about like, well, do I have parental support? Do I have a group of friends? Like, how am I going to continue to live my life as a single parent? And then I think, for the same-sex male couples, usually they have at least some friends that have done this before them. And so they you glom onto that, but it's not a village. And I think that catches people off guard. It caught me and my husband off guard.
Sure.
That we weren't as intentional about the village as we should have been in retrospect.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. How is it to go through the world as a gay male parent? It's a big question, obviously, but I imagine like,
how is it?
But yeah, tell me on behalf of everybody. But it just personal to your experience. And I will say it's personally to my experience. I think I felt like as a new mom, I both felt like I should be great at this, or I should know how to do this, or I should naturally feel included in things. And yet also felt all of that felt totally alien to me. And I also was like, are these my people? Am I a mommy class mom? Like, I don't know. Like, I think there was a lot of figuring out both how I identified alongside this child, and then also kind of as an extension of my identity, like how did people receive me, I guess. I don't know from your experience if maybe that's the universal experience, but I'm sure there's added layers for you. So I was curious if you could sort of share a little bit about what that was like and continues to be
totally.
like.
Totally. I think it's always difficult to really find your people, and some of that is built on an assumption that, maybe there aren't two working parents, or that you have oodles of resources where you can sort of have a nanny on essentially retainer, at least in New York City where we live, that you have sort of a nanny to pick up the slack, and that frees you up to be able to do all of the things you need to do. But then, people would be like, oh, I know these other men that have a baby, and it's such a novelty that it was sort of like an assumption, well, you'll be friends with the other gay parents. And it's like, well, there's like 10 of us.
Yeah.
Even in like this neighborhood, there's more than 10, but like, that's not necessarily going to be our people. Like our friend group outside of parenthood was diverse, and it hasn't really changed in that respect. And so I think, I hear you, Sarah. It has always felt like difficult to find our people. And I think, again, there's like a little bit of an added layer of not having that piece in common with anybody, right? Like if the men are not the primary parent, but I am also a man, then there's a way in which I can't totally relate to the men, and I can't totally relate to the women. Or like a little third category. And it is like a pity party. Again, it's advantages and disadvantages, and this is very far from a woe is me. But I think, there's natural ways in which heterosexual couples tend to sort of create bonds as parents that we are apart from.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, we found our people. We feel like, thankfully, a lot of the kids that our daughters have gravitated to have cool parents. And that's the dream, right? That like, please don't befriend the kid whose parents I don't like.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Truly.
Bring me good parent friends, please. And thankfully they have, and we really like a lot of the folks in our school communities, but it's not a monolith. I think I feel exactly how you feel, Sarah, with maybe just like a slight little extra layer.
Yeah. Have you learned, or how has seeing so many couples through your work go through the process of, in various ways, desperately wanting to find a way to have a child? The child arrives, then they kind of, I don't know how much you remain in touch with them after that, but I'm curious. I'm finding with this podcast, I'm inundated obviously with a lot of parenting information, and it's making me sometimes be in my head a little bit more than I was before about my life choices in the context of children. But I'm curious what you've learned, if there's anything thematically among having seen so many through this process, and how it might show up in the way that you approach your role as parent.
There are some lessons. I mean, there's always I think for anybody who brings their kid into the world with help, right? And that's, even if it's just like, I went to the doctor and had an IUI and it took, and like I had a relatively straightforward fertility journey. Or I did IVF, but I did ultimately, it's my gametes and I carried the pregnancy, or it's this extra layer that I deal with, which is, I needed to find a sperm donor or an egg donor or both, or donor embryos, and I needed to be a fertility patient, and I needed to find a gestational carrier to carry this pregnancy. There's this expectation of gratitude, right? Which is genuinely felt. Like I am so grateful to the 3 different women that helped me have my daughters, to our egg donor and to the 2 surrogates that carried them. And I'm grateful that I had the resources to be able to do this, that I had the sort of like wherewithal, capacity, the will to push forward, like everything.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for these children. And yet, right, just like every parent, like, I love my kids,
Right.
but
Yeah.
and so I think I have to sometimes, each set of intended parents is going to be different in that regard as well, about the sort of anxieties that they bring into this process, the gratitude they feel versus the I wish that this weren't how I was having my kids, right? Sort of duality of like, oh my God, thank God this is available to me. But also, I really wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy kind of feeling about like being disconnected and having to trust somebody else to carry your child.
Yeah.
And they're putting a lot of trust in you, and it's a very unique and intimate relationship. And I think at the end of the day, does it affect how I parent my kids? A little bit, in that I know how lucky I am, and they also drive me crazy.
Yeah.
And then it really affects me professionally that I have the personal impact they experience, because I try not to lump all of my clients together, and I try to understand a little bit more about what they're carrying into this process individually. So that's the ideal, is that we're individualizing our support and not treating every case the same, because I have clients that had 17 failed embryo transfers before coming to the agency, and I have clients that have had massive losses, second trimester, third trimester pregnancy losses, repeated pregnancy losses. Then I also have clients that they were born with a uterine malformation where they knew that surrogacy was going to be the only way they would have biological kids, or of course gay male couples for whom this feels like a burden, but also very exciting. And thank God we have this opportunity to us. And so everybody's coming in with a very different mental outlook. And every surrogate is a parent of typically young kids as well, with demands on her time and oftentimes a job on top of, fitting in this massive project and being pregnant for somebody else.
Yeah.
So, I think everybody's a unique snowflake, and I try to remember that, right? That no journey is going to be the same, no surrogate is the same, no intended parent is the same, and I need to do my best to meet people where they are.
Yeah, you're very kind-hearted.
Yeah.
And very empathetic. No, it's great. One thing that's slightly related to what you were saying, of just sort of the reality of it's a complicated thing. You can be both grateful and frustrated and all these things. This idea of all, and it often, almost exclusively, actually, you hold me honest here, but it seems like this idea of having it all in life is really spoken directly towards women. And I actually don't think that's fair. I think everyone might be curious about how to fit everything in, but we like to ask a lot of our guests about this idea of having it all, and because in many ways it seems like they do have it all, and yet probably it's impossible, and is it making them happy? But do you have the burden of wanting to have it all, or how do you think about this concept of having it all in life? And how would you define it all if you had to?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a typical cis man, I just expected to have it all.
Really?
Right?
Yeah.
Just imbued with that confidence and never questioned having it all. No, it's a total gendered thing. I mean, the fact that we're still asking like female elected officials about how they're still there for their kids, and like literally a man never gets asked about whether
Right.
they're still present for their family in any way.
Right.
Like voting on the Senate floor. I mean, it's
Right.
it's crazy that we're in 2025, and all the questions about like how do you do it are directed to the female CEOs and the female elected officials.
Yeah.
And it's not that the question shouldn't be asked to the women; it should just also be asked of
Yes.
men. And if they're like, if they're stumbling around and saying like, well, I just, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but is it because you're relying on your partner to really do the
Right.
work? And like, please be honest about that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I have it all. It's difficult. I think you just adjust your expectations to knowing that like it all is not 100% commitment to either side or 100% perfection. Like,
Yeah.
certainly not a perfect parent, and there's a lot of ways in which I could be pushing my business forward or doing more that I just don't, and I have to accept good enough. But I think there were a lot of times in my career where, or even as a student, where I was able to accept good enough and avoid falling into the perfection trap.
Yeah.
And so I try to be kind to myself in that respect, and just know that like having it all is not being perfect at any of it. It's just putting it all on your plate and saying, well, it's all there.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes, totally.
Good.
Not going to always eat all my vegetables.
But I see
But I
them.
can come back to them.
Hey.
Right. I mean,
Yes.
even if I don't have, if he's laundry daddy and I'm food daddy, like there are so many times where the refrigerator is pretty bare, and just like, well, didn't have time to get to the supermarket, and I have to just like accept that, even though I have a lot of support around me, I still fell down on the job with my little segment, because it happens, and I will strive to do better, and we'll move on with our lives.
Yeah.
So,
Amazing.
That's like in some ways, the most depressing answer to like, well, how can you have it all? It's like, I'm not answering no, but I'm saying, well, all just means that you're going to mess up every part of it.
Well, I also,
But I
I
think
actually love it. Sorry, go ahead, Dee.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was just gonna say that's like real and realistic, and like takes off the pressure of like having it all and having to be perfect at all times, because
I
that's
completely
not
agree.
life.
Yes.
It's messy and like it's a little imperfect, but like we're ultimately getting there. Like, and that's okay.
And for women, this pressure to do it all perfectly is what is inherently like suggested in that phrase of like, you'll have it all and you'll be beautiful and happy and you'll have perfect kids and you'll have this dream job that you work hard but not too hard and you get paid really, like, it's just all of this impossible perfectionist stuff that's built into that.
And it's about like, well, what are the expectations of the other people in those realms? Like, does your boss understand that you're not always going to be perfect at work because of everything else that's happening outside of work? And does your partner, is he or she going to step into the breach and help you because of what's going on at work and the fact that you have to stay late? And like, that's just like one example of the push-pull of the, this segmented life, right? So you're saying like, can you show up with your full self? That requires that there's not just like a, hey, it's Pride Month, we recognize you, gay employee, but an acceptance like in the work setting of how that actually negatively may impact the company. And an acceptance at home about how that may negatively impact your marriage and your ability to parent. And it doesn't mean that you should only do one or the other, and that you have to make a choice or, quit some key aspect of something or other. But just, everybody accepts that there's 24 hours in a day and nobody has found a way to make more of those. And it's tough.
Yes. Maybe Gen AI will figure that out. I feel like that's, why are we like messing around with other stuff? Yeah, it's true.
I don't want more time.
It's true. It's true.
This is good. We're good.
Okay. Speaking of time, we have three short answer questions just to close, and you can speak as long as you want, but we can also use the clock. If you could go back and tell yourself one thing as you navigated newborn life in the earliest days for the first time, anything come to mind?
Yeah, I think I sort of touched on it earlier, but the thing that in retrospect I would have done differently is be more intentional about building a village. it's hard being a parent. It's hard being a working parent. It's hard in a household of 2 working parents.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's no, I think a lot of people sort of thankfully have some sort of like close friend, family member who's like local and interested and capable of just sort of being there as like a built-in village. And absent that, you have to create it, right? And we talked about how, through like expecting moms and new moms and all of that, that sort of naturally develops, not for everybody, of course. But I think for us, complicated by the fact that our older daughter was born in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic, and sort of a limit on how much of a village you can create when the village is going to kill you through transmitting infectious diseases. But I would have like basically sat down and been like, who is in our life, and have conversations with them in advance. Like, are you actually, and this is not on you. I've made the decision to have kids, and I'm not expecting you to be my village, but are you interested in being my village? Are you capable of it? Like, because if not, I need to create this down the road so that I can actually get away from said children occasionally.
Yes, totally.
That's so beautiful to think about that and intentionally, like, I don't know, who you're choosing to surround yourself.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that like will move to the same little town or like basically live in a sort of more communal way, and that's not our vibe. And we live in New York and not San Francisco, but. I'm jealous a little bit of that, of like, hey, everybody, and this is part of the reason people also like move to certain suburbs, is they know that everybody's moving there at like the same time in their kids' lives, and like, so that the block will have the kids playing street hockey and does anyone rollerblade anymore? The kids are gonna like run into each other's houses, right? That's the idyllic version of this. Of like, I live in a New York City apartment building, and that's fine. That's a choice we made. But like, there's other ways to like create a village, and I don't think we were as intentional about it as. So I don't know if that's newborn life.
Yeah. Well, that answered our other question is like one thing or a theme of things that would have made it easier along the journey. I'm guessing having a village may have answered the question.
Although too, the other thing we talked about, like our journey is not just getting pregnant, having a kid, and then figuring out parenthood. It's like, well, how do I have a kid? So like the journey for somebody that needs third-party assistance in building their family starts like years before this kid even arrives. And that process sucks for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And that was the point in starting this agency, was that the journey to the child to also be better, obviously better, but for there to be somebody who would actually sort of like slow everybody down and make them think through their decisions. Right. So like for a surrogate, like there are agencies that'll be like, okay, we'll collect your medical records and off you go. And for us, my co-director and I sit down with every surrogate for an hour, and we're just like, here are the risks. Here's what you're getting into. Like, let's make sure you're going into this with eyes wide open about not just how beautiful it can be, but also how this can be difficult, and you're oftentimes taking daily injections, and you have 1,000,001 appointments, and you're going to have to fly to a fertility clinic, and just like, let's talk through the logistics and everything that you're doing and how this will affect your partner and your kids. And then for the parent side of things, like if somebody needs a sperm donor or egg donor, it's not just where do you find this egg donor, it's like, how do you select somebody who's going to contribute half of your children's genetics, and how are you going to make sure you get medical updates from that person, and how are you going to make sure that they're open if your kid 5, 10, 15, 25 years down the line wants to contact them? How are they going to receive that? What information about them do you have to provide to your kids? Like, how do you raise a donor conceived human? And same thing with your surrogate. Like, how do we tell this story? So there's like points way before there's even a pregnancy where they're making decisions about the way they bring this kid into the world that have implications, have ethical implications, and implications for them, for their children. So I am like sanding the gears to actually slow down the process a lot of times and make sure that people have thought through it all.
Yes.
And that's what I wish that we had a little bit more.
Yeah.
I don't think there was anybody that really sat my husband and I down and were like, here are the implications of your decisions, and please have them in mind as you go through this series of steps.
Yeah. I'm so glad you're doing this work. Because I mean, it's something I thankfully didn't need extra third-party support somehow. Just as you're saying, like things that I wouldn't have known to think about. And even also, I feel like we should have another segment and talk to the surrogates, like their experience of and what that feels like related to many of whom may already have had their own children, but like what that in the context, all of them do, in the context of mothers and motherhood, like how that feels similar but different, obviously. There's so much richness in the world that you're like paying attention to and building and bringing more support to. And I like that you're doing it with a very human lens. It's not a transaction.
No, definitely not. We're not making widgets.
Yes. Okay. Final question is, your kids may be listening, or one day they will. Is there anything you'd like to say to them?
We did our best. And I have no doubt we will mess these kids up in all sorts of ways, right? And I'll set aside money for their therapy bills later on in their life. But again, like sort of put upon us at like if we were going to have kids, it needed to be complicated and intentional. And so I think baked into that intentionality, like we had a lot of decisions to make, and we did our best with those decisions. And hopefully nobody comes to regret those decisions.
Yeah.
But that's even in parenting, I think we talked pretty early on about like styles, and it's impossible to talk through all of it until you're actually like in the moment and your kid like threw food on the floor intentionally, and like how do you respond?
Yeah.
So I think we tried to just be intentional about like all of the myriad decisions you have to make as a parent too, around like screen time and like when do they eat their first cupcake and all of that. And I think so many parents are just doing their best.
Yeah.
Trying to make decisions along the way that make sense. So I would plead with my girls to know that we tried.
Yeah. Well, and how wanted they are. I think about, and just the idea for kids psychologically as they grow up to know that they matter and they belong. I mean, this is a very fundamental thing, that how much can a child necessarily understand, like hold the weight of that? But just these are couples or single people coming like desperately wanting to have these kids. And that has to translate to a sense of belonging and meaning within their own family, among the children.
So. I mean, there's a danger. You don't want it to be a burden for those kids. Like, oh, I was so wanted, and now I have a disappointment for my parents who went through hell and high water to have me. So, I don't want it to be a thing that they like feel like there's weight associated with it.
Sure.
But you're right. There's no oopsie surrogacy baby, and it takes a lot more than a glass of Merlot. So so hopefully there will be a little bit of grace and understanding that everybody's carrying their own things from their childhood, and
totally
we go to therapy,
totally
try not to repeat it in the next generation, but we're all just doing our best.
That's true. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story and your perspective. It's like so valuable to everyone that's hearing this, and I think makes everyone see their life in a little bit of a different way. So I really, really appreciate you sharing your full self with us. So thank you. We feel very lucky.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for doing what you do.
Yeah, thank you, Jarret. Well, Jarret, what a beautiful human. Doing beautiful things. I feel like I have so many questions about so many aspects of his life and his work that we didn't get to ask enough about. Like I really do want to explore the surrogacy experience, and how that's so beautiful and complicated and has so many layers, but I also is obviously relevant to the idea of what does it mean to be a mother?
I know I had 5,000 questions and instead just was like taking any and all things in that he was saying. I think that what an incredibly complex and emotional and just like difficult thing it must be to know that your baby is not just outside of your body, but like outside of your sphere, that like they're
Yeah.
not there with you and you have only so much control over the things that happen. You know, it's such a crash course into parenting of like, ooh, I have no control over anything,
Right.
you know? Like,
Yeah.
but then also having to have all of those complex conversations and visibility over every little detail,
Yeah.
while not having that person who's pregnant with you. I think that that
Yeah.
is so, I don't know. I just can't
Yeah.
imagine.
I know. Totally. And they do in a heterosexual couple, they often talk about how mom becomes a parent the moment she gets pregnant or the script
Exactly.
turns blue, whatever.
Yeah.
And then dad doesn't really realize until child arrives.
Mhm.
And I do think it's so essential that Jarret is trying to, um, in some ways, I wish that services were there for
For
all
everyone.
for same sex and otherwise
Yes.
couples, but
Yes.
that trying like thinking ahead and getting our minds around beyond like the enormous logistical complexity beyond logistics of just
Mhm.
like pulling all the parts together in order to create a life, but then also just thinking about what it means when this thing does arrive.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's heavy. It's a beautiful responsibility. And he's such a I don't know, an empathetic
Yeah.
character. I feel like he would make me feel at ease if I
Yes.
was in that circumstance.
Yeah. Also, so beautiful that him and his husband went through this, felt like it could have been better and they didn't have the things they wanted or needed. And then he decided to take such a step to say, like, I will be that person. I think that is so
Mhm.
incredible. And like something also I would have liked to hear even more and more about, like knowing that becoming a parent and having their first kid and during a pandemic where like you don't have your village and you're in New York City, which is
Yeah,
like epicenter, like
totally. Yeah.
I don't know. I think that that's so powerful. I really appreciated in the last few like buzz questions that we have.
Mhm.
He kept saying intentional, and I wanted to like he is such an intentional human about everything as a
Yeah.
parent and what he's choosing to do for work and how he
Mhm.
engages with their, I think, do they call them clients? Is that how?
Mhm.
Like I think that that's so there's so much intention behind every action, every question, every decision. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yes. Oh, I totally agree. I also, I don't know if you felt it again, but it relates to the intention piece of like who does what in this partnership related to
Mhm.
the kids. And just hearing him articulate the
Mhm.
minutia that otherwise just is stuck in my head and doesn't feel worth sharing out loud as much
Yeah.
as I would love someone else to be carrying it and doing it, but also feels annoying.
Mhm.
When he was, talking about when to change the bed sheets and when to
I
get the
know.
next size clothes and like when to make the dentist appointment. And I said it in the interview, but like, I was like, when did I don't know that you're supposed to get it. I don't know the
100%.
cadence of
Yep.
dentistry. Like, I don't know any of this, but I was at the last appointment. So now I'm going to hear
Yeah.
about the one that comes next. And it sort of just piles on of like, it's hard to kind of get out of it. And it is in some ways comforting to know that like, even in a relationship where they have to talk about so many of these
Mhm.
things, I don't know why the rest of us don't feel like they have to, but for
Mhm.
whatever reason, it seems like necessary to articulate, to make known the things that need to be handled.
Yeah.
That even then it's like it's a lot and not always fair.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
When he was saying all of those things, I was like, I don't even think about that. I just you just do it
Right.
because it's like
Exactly. Yeah.
Or like, oh, they can't have honey until they're one, or these like little things. And it's like, well, of course you know that and you do that and you
Yeah.
practice these things, but you just don't think about it. And
Yeah.
so that's what I think is so like incredible to be so forward about these conversations and asking these questions. Who's doing skin to skin first? Who's
Right.
doing this? Who found the pediatrician? It's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
even when you have the best partner, it is still such a default parent mode, you know? And he
Yeah.
said there is no default. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that I like to highlight, which was, I feel like in these conversations we've had a lot of, almost becomes cliche, and that like once I had a kid, I really wanted to make sure I did work that mattered and that had purpose. And it was interesting to hear that come. And I know that that's an experience that is not unique to women, and I think it's healthy to hear these stories. It almost made periodically thought about like, should we also spin up, whether we host it or not, like the fathers? Because I think a lot of what he said was, I once we had kids, I realized that like so much of what how my work like functioned was not really sustainable anymore. And gave him a little bit of a kick to like try something new and entrepreneurial and a little more flexible in a certain way. But I do think it's interesting the role that having kids plays in what people want and need out of work. And it's good to hear that coming from all parts of every spectrum. Because it is, having kids just is, I think, universally just a life altering experience.
Yeah.
And there's life before the kid, and then there's who you are after. And that affects a lot of things, including what you want out of work. And so it was good to hear him say that.
Yes. My partner and I had that conversation this weekend of like, if I am choosing to spend time, not choosing, because sometimes you just have to, he has to work, but like, if I'm choosing to be away from my family, then like, what am I doing that's impactful and feels good and gives back to my community and us and fuels my fire? Because like, I'd rather just be home with the family.
Right.
So
totally.
like, but it is so good to hear that and be reminded of that, like that so much of it is rooted in like, the system is just so fucked.
Yeah.
So just because they have to doesn't mean that they want to sometimes.
Yes, totally.
It's just what's expected.
I know. And on that point, like the having it all idea, which it was just helpful to, as I was asking the question, I was like, man, we're only asking women this question. And I think he was half joking, but within every joke is truth. He's like, I just assumed I would have it all. So like, why am I worried about having it all? It's also refreshing.
Because there's also like almost like less of an excuse for them to not have it all because of society. I don't believe that, but I feel like it's like, of course you have it all. Duh. Like you go to work and you have your wife that you come home to and your kid, whatever. It's like, oh my God. We're all dealing with the same pressures and expectations and inability to fulfill these like insane quotas and standards. Like,
exactly.
And I love that consistently everyone has said basically like, I think I have it all, and all doesn't mean 100% of everything all the time.
Right. Exactly. Doesn't mean I'm getting all A's everywhere. Doesn't mean I have all the money I've ever wanted. Doesn't mean I can travel at will. Like it doesn't.
Right. So that means that we're all doing it right because no one has figured out how to do everything perfect all the time, 100% of the time.
Yes. Take ownership of all. I totally agree. Wow. Okay. Jarret, thank you so much for coming on. That was really, really meaningful.
We need like 5 more episodes though.
I know.
think I just like zoned
we were
out
just absorbing.
listening.
There's so much to absorb. Yeah. Okay, a quick moment of joy. And I was almost going to say, I think my joy this week was talking to Jarret. It was just like so nice to hear a different perspective on this whole thing. And it kind of like made the idea new to me again. Where's your joyfulness these days,
My
V?
joy is, so this week I don't even know how long he's going to stay here, which is fun. One of our like really best friends who used to live with us in California and then also moved back to the East Coast around similar time, is hanging out with us right now. And it's just been so lovely to have someone else in the home during the day so I'm not so lonely.
Oh, yay.
And just like having another energy in the house is just nice. It feels good. So that's my joy, is like getting to spend time with friends that we care about that I haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah.
So it's nice.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds so. Yes, everyone wants the village and the community and connection. Ugh.
Feels
Get
good.
off the screens.
Also, to be around a friend that you can just have, like, not even talking to him, just having him in the house feels good. Where it's like low stakes, low pressure. It's like we don't need to have like a crazy conversation all day, every day. It's just knowing that you're there in the other room. That feels good. So,
I get that totally.
Yeah,
just the
that's
presence.
my joy. Yes.
Oh, good friend. All right. Well, go enjoy your friend that you don't have to host. Those are the best kinds.
Look who just woke up in perfect timing.
He's perfect.
Nice.
All right, V.
All right,
I love you so much.
you.
Talk to you soon. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode and we can reach even more rock stars like you. The Mothers is a production of Backline Media, shining a light on those who carry the team.